Hello, everybody, and I'm very happy to be here today among you on the 27th Annual CiCea International Conference. My name is Sarah Abutaleb, and today I'll be presenting my topic, which talks about breastfeeding and gender roles. This is the outline of my presentation. Of course, I'll be mentioning the research problems, questions, and so on and so forth. A child emerging from a woman's womb, it's a universally known image. A child forged by a woman's breast milk is almost unheard of. And basically, my research revolves around this specific idea how women in the MENA region can create children by using their breast milk. So, the significance of milk in this region in shaping the social ties and also how it can create prohibition, like marriage prohibition, which means that those children who share the same milk from the same woman, they cannot marry one another. And this concept was used by so many women to manipulate the social ties. Also, I'm talking about how milk can create and dissolve social problems in the MENA region. I'm discussing also how the physicality of this practice is seen and is approached, and the concept and the belief of religion and the legal teaching versus the reality of the practice. Here you are looking at a picture like an illustration. This woman has her own spouse or husband, and the child with a circle around him is her biological child. If this woman feeds many other non biological children, those will be the siblings of the biological child, and they will also be uh, and those children will be hers as well. And all the relatives of this woman are the relatives of the children who received this milk. Same goes for the relatives of the father or the spouse of this woman. But there is a controversial issue, which is who owns the milk. And this can be found and traced in the jurist school. We can see here an illustration. You can see here that it says that a woman or a milk can be taken from a dead woman, for example, and still it has the same effect in creating this social bond. We can also say that a milk can be taken from a virgin, for example. If we are talking about a virgin woman, then it means that she has no spouse. So in this case, the ownership of the milk is can be considered false because if this woman is taken from a virgin, it means that this milk belongs to her only. There is no man that caused the existence of this breast milk. In the MENA region as well, it was believed, and it is still the same case nowadays. People believe that breast milk can affect the child who received this milk. So it depends on the woman who's providing this milk. For example, if this woman is smart, many people believe that the child will inherit, let's say, or gain those or these traits from the woman who provide this milk. Here you can see like this is part of a poem I translated. In this poem we can see that the poet is criticizing a prince, and he's accusing that the milk he received was mixed with barley, and it created like bad traits in this prince. Like he's like criticizing negatively, very negatively. And also, there is this sentence where people, you can still hear it till nowadays. People are using it a lot. Whenever they want to describe a man or a woman, they will always say that he's a real man. He has nursed from the milk of a wolf. So there is a similarity that you can gain the traits of the milk provider. Of course, this is a similarity. Nobody is really drinking the milk of a wolf, but maybe some people, but not nowadays. And also, mothers in the MENA region, when they are angry from their own children, you might hear them say, You are not my child. It's impossible that I have ever provided you with a drop of my breast milk. Going back to the concept that people believed that milk can affect the child, not only his traits, but rather the look. This is a quote taken from an Iranian movie. It says, I tried to find him a wet nurse. I went through 100 families looking for one. As a result, he has drunk the milk of many women, even cows. He looks like 100 different women, the eyes of one, the ears of another. And in this quote, you can see how people believed that even the physical traits can be gained through milk. So, the influence and the importance of milk, not only in shaping the identity and the behavior, but also in shaping how you look like, which is also part of your identity. So, they mixed, or let's say they put a lot of pressure on a woman who's providing the milk to the child, saying that this woman will transmit her traits, and sometimes some people believe that even the physical or the facial expressions or movements. Also through the interviews, I've noticed that so many people said that, oh, I move like my milk mother, for example. This is a very famous quote by Michelangelo, where he had a wet nurse and her family were stonemasons. And he believed that he took this craft from his milk mother because he received her milk. Here are some pictures to illustrate how this practice was so present in history and in the visual representations. Here you can see pictures or illustration, for example, the statue where the woman is holding her breast, and also the black and white painting where you can see a woman breastfeeding two children. This is a representation of the goddess Asherah to show you the importance of milk. And if a goddess is breastfeeding a child, normal child, this child can become representable and more socially acceptable because he received the milk of a goddess. This research, of course, like any other research, has a research problem. But in here, you can see how complex this research because it's attributed to the practice and the physicality of the practice. Also, the social impact of milk sharing in the MENA region is understudied, despite the fact that it was there in history for so long. And this left us with a major gaps in understanding milk kinship and milk ownership. Also, we have a huge problem. Like many people believes that the milk is owned by the man because he's the one. Like during the physical interaction with a woman, when she becomes pregnant, it's believed that he's the source of the milk. Also, there is another problem, which is the religious manipulation for social and personal gains. Many people use this concept of milk kinship in playing in the social ties for their own personal benefits. And of course, the gender power dynamics, the psychological and the social influence. The research questions. I'm asking how women in the MENA region use their milk to manipulate the social ties. I'm also talking about the sociological view that humans can be relatives not only through marriage and blood, but also there is this skin or tie which is related to milk. And I'm trying also to understand if milk works as semen in the targeted location of the study. These are the research objectives, like to understand what nursing practices and the social manipulation and the broader social implication. Examine how milk kinship shapes marriage limitation, which is called mahram relations, and the transmission of milk ties. The position the milk kinship within comparative research in anthropology and sociology. Regarding the theoretical framework, I'm talking about kinship and its social structure and talking about how milk can create alliances, new social bonds, and social boundaries. Also, the concept of recognition and identity formation, which is how many children relate themselves to their milk mothers, and also how many milk mothers relate themselves to the children that they provided them with milk, and how milk shapes identity in the MENA region. And of course, I'm talking about the cultural memory and the folk theory as well. In my research, I relies a lot on history, religion, and the sociological perspective, and also on many interviews and key scholars like Thuraya al-Turki and Jaladi. This is the methodology I'm using. I'm using the qualitative sociological anthropological concept, and the data sources I used historical text, legal and religious documents, literature, interviews, and focus groups. And I analyzed the interviews regarding the themes and the comparative analysis across multiple sources. Distribution of the participation, this is the sample size. And moving to the results, these are some of these are the most important results. I found out that the research proves that women use their milk in shaping and reshaping social ties, whether they did it on purpose or like unwillingly. And women's milk has a similar function to a man's semen in forging children, and the ambiguity of the feedings versus the lived practice and the religious teachings. Because, just to very quickly draw your attention to the ambiguity of the feedings, because it's believed that you should feed the child more than 3 times, but actually there is no trace whatsoever about. Of course there is a lot of sayings how many feedings you should give the baby, but in the original text it does not really mention how many feedings. Or some people say 1 drop is enough to create this social bond. Some people says more than that, but in reality there is a huge ambiguity, and that what creates the conflict in the heads of uh, people, like when is a child considered mine after how many feedings. Also, I found out that milk is not only a biological substance, it's also social, spiritual, symbolic, and moral. And milk ties influence identity, sense of belonging, and the recognition. Cultural memory preserve milk kinship even after its decline in certain places. These are some of the citations from the interviews, but I'll just read the most distinguished ones. Those are a couple who were in love, and they said that we had the wedding set 2 times and then we canceled it. And this, from this citation, you can see how people are convinced and somehow doubtful. Like it depends on their background and it depends on the situation and who told them that you shared the milk. Also, this was a very, very interesting quotation from a man who believes that he's very good in mathematics, and that's because his milk mother was a mathematician. What's very strange and very crazy was, even for me while doing the research, that there is this concept of traveling kinship in a jar. This is what I call it, because some people will give or pump their breast milk and let somebody transfer this milk to create social bonds even in another continent, just to, for example, to allow adoption, because it's forbidden in the MENA region. Like you can adopt, but of course you cannot change the name. But the milk make this non-biological child biological, and it gives legitimacy to this relation. So many women from the family used to provide milk for another person to, as I said, to travel with it and create this relation. Of course, there's still modern representation of this practice. We can see it still in movies and series, how people are canceling the weddings, for example, because they discover that those share the same milk. And this is of course a black comedy implication. This man, like his mother, breastfed almost the whole village, and he left out with just one old woman. And in this series, she was represented as an ugly woman, and he had to marry her. And also, an informer comes again to tell them that even this woman is his milk sister, and he's not allowed to marry anybody. This is the conclusion that women tend to manipulate social ties, whether they did it on purpose or like unconsciously. And milk carries power similar to semen in the MENA region. I'm also talking about how social ties are not tied to nasab or affinity and blood, but also milk has a place on this list. The belief that milk has a medical and psychological influence. Also, the social parenthood can, in some cases, override the biological ties. Lactation and milk kinship are culturally constructed. Milk kinship functions as a network building strategy. This is the limitation of my study, and these are the references. Thank you so much for your time and wish you a lovely day ahead.